announcing the marathon thing?
Sean, I've been practicing this in secondary school.
Oh, my bad. I got so excited. Go ahead.
I was hoping my career as an advert voiceover was coming to life, but to the point. We are going to Barcelona for Paddy's Day. They have changed the date of the marathon, so we now have the extra day's leave. We have no excuses. PBs are there to be had from the 14th to the 17th of March 2025. Myself and Sean are filling a bus. 56 people will be leaving Dublin Airport and heading to Barcelona. I am making a t-shirt for the trip. It's going to be Eric approved. I cannot guarantee the medals. That's where I draw the line. Prices are still the same, but we do need to book by June 7th. So if anyone is thinking about coming, has signed up and pre-registered, you need to book this week. And if you're listening this week, you have to put your money where your mouth is on this one, because we cannot guarantee the prices after this weekend. Aer Lingus, if you're listening, fuck off. Don't change anything. But that is what we are doing. So the link to everything is in the bio. You'll be brought straight to the WeTransfer if you're traveling with a supporter, if you're traveling on your own and willing to share, or if you just want your own room. We have every option available, and it's going to be a fantastic weekend.
Like Eric said, the link to that is in our Instagram bio at Any Given Runday Podcast. With that said, it's this week's episode of the Any Given Runday Podcast. Let's go. Easy E, how are we?
It's hot. Sean, it's hot.
So we're hearing it's hot. We know you're not talking about Ireland right now, although it might be hot by the time this podcast comes out, coming close to leaving cert weather. Where you are, though, it sounds very hot, son. I don't know how you're surviving. Where are you and what are you doing?
I'm in Doha now. I took a new job flying whirlybirds out to oil and gas rigs, but the temperature got to 46 degrees today. And like it was nasty, like doable, but nasty. Like you're just disgusting. You're just sweaty as soon as you walk out. It's horrible. We went doing this training today, Sean. So obviously it's known on the podcast, not a big fan of the water, all of that, and duck to swimming. And yeah, here's my violin. Grand. We were doing underwater escape training today, where essentially you're in a fake helicopter. They drop in a pool and they dunk you, like it sinks, and then you have to escape. And then they invert you, so you go upside down, and then you have to escape. I really don't like doing it, but it was so hot. It was like a warehouse. It was like just that tin roof type warehouse.
Oh, God.
Then it had aircon in it. But I was in this overall, and I was sweating. I have never wanted a near drowning experience so quick in all my life, Sean. I was like, please sink this. And I was actually, it's the first time I've enjoyed doing the Hewitt, because I was actually enjoying just being under the water and taking my time. Like, oh, it's so nice.
That sounds like my worst nightmare.
It is hot. And the last couple of days, so I arrived on Sunday, and then obviously treating it like a camp, because there's nothing here. Like, I'm not in the city. I'm outside the city. I'm in a kind of a compound. It's very different. So from my front door back around the compound is just over a kilometer. It's about 1.1k. I did 4 laps, got to 4.5k. My heart rate was 190, and I think I was at a 620 or something. It was bonkers. And then I did it again last night, varying it up. I tried to see how I'd feel when I was running fast, running slow, and I can actually feel like burning. Like, it wasn't like my lungs were on fire because I was working that hard. It was breathing air that hot. It really was like, my God, they're on fire. Like, it is just madness. But I am equally enjoying how crazy it is, because it's different. It's something different. It's going to be a new challenge. So yeah, it's absolutely madness. The endurance game is changing.
The Irish guys got a Doha. So when you're doing that training, you're looking around you. Is everyone else, I suppose that's used to pun, in the same boat here? Or is it that like you're just not used to this? Like how's everyone else around you there?
I am the only Caucasian male in this entire compound, and they're all looking at me like I am nuts. And because they're all walking around, or like you see, like the guys are doing their training, they're in their sports gear, but they're walking one lap, and they're just seeing me growling and running around and making noise. Like it's I'm definitely an outlier in this, and I probably am stupid, but it's
well, yeah.
But it is a different challenge, and there's going to be a lot, like if I'm going to be taking this serious, this isn't going to be about running 10Ks and
You
20Ks.
can't.
No, but there will be hour long walk run. There will be an hour and a half. The reason being, Sean, is the heart rate's coming up. Like on a walk, my heart rate's hitting 140, 150 because it's just so hot. So, I'm interested to see at what point can I run nearly, to maintain a zone two. So it's absolutely crazy. It's an experiment that I'm kind of enjoying. My gym as well. I had the best gym in the world there, and I was spoiled. And now it's like Rocky season, whatever, and it's pretty raw.
It's Rocky
There's
Four. Instead of going to Russia with the snow, you've somehow gone
yeah,
straight to hell.
yeah. So the gym itself isn't there. So the lifting game that I was enjoying so much has kind of changed, and I really enjoyed lifting the weights. So now it's kind of moving back to more of a 60-40 on the cardio versus the weights because the facility is okay. It's okay. I can do the bed, but I'm not doing to the same level. So it's been a nice transition, and it's different, and it's definitely a new experience. And I don't know if I'll be doing a marathon in this kind of heat, but I'll see if I can get to a 10K, and then we'll call it a day.
Speaking of transitions between cardio and strength and stuff like that, that's pretty much what this podcast episode is about. If people want to do something in their off season from running, because once again on a podcast with no notification or nothing, you tried to sign me up to something else.
Yeah, I did. Only because one, I didn't know what it was beforehand, and two, I was convinced after the episode.
That's the great thing about this one. So it's getting very popular over here, and what we're talking about is Hyrox. I think last week we were talking about Hyrox and stuff as well. In the last couple of episodes, we've had people talking about Hyrox and their off-season training and balancing out with something else, and that could be something that's in your mind when you listen to this week's episode of the podcast with someone who is very accomplished in Hyrox.
Yeah, we have a really, really top athlete, someone who's in the elite 15. It's absolutely amazing to hear the story. And the best part for this, people are probably listening going, why are we talking about Hyrox on an episode of running? And they have a fantastic running ability. They've had a semi-career, I suppose, or attempt at a career in running and operating at a really high standard, and that foundation in endurance and training. And it's something that, like, you had to explain to me before the episode, Sean, what is Hyrox? What are we going to talk about here? So maybe one or two people probably need a little glimpse before the episode.
So Hyrox, and you'll hear in this episode, Tom talks about how runners may have an advantage in Hyrox because it's an endurance game. But the great thing about something like Hyrox compared to, let's say, a CrossFit is a CrossFit can get very technical in terms of walking handstands and barbell clean and presses and stuff. And exercises are not that easy. But for the most part, actually for the entire part, Hyrox are exercises that you could probably do now. If you're able to lunge and squat, you're able to do these exercises and push a sled. So it's 8 individual exercises, and we get into on the podcast about each part of the event more specifically. But in between each exercise, you do a 1K run. So it is all about endurance. It's exercises that you could do, like pushing a sled, using a ski, a rower. Exercises are not so fun, like burpees and then doing a broad jump and doing that over 80 meters. But somehow, despite that, at the end of this podcast, Eric, you're convinced that this is something we should do some stage down the line.
I think, like everyone, I'd pay a tenner to watch you do it.
I saw people doing it last year. It was phenomenal. And I think I even mentioned the podcast, like they did it last year, the day before the Dublin Marathon. And I was watching people just going through the ringer on it and being like, thank God I'm running 42K the next day instead of doing this. Obviously, I wouldn't be prepped or trained for it, but it's a great atmosphere. It's a great buzz. You're in an hour and a half and you're done, and they do it well.
Yeah, and it's an event. It is an event, and it's like anything. It's a mass event of people and the cheers and the trials and tribulations. And the bit that was attracting me is the endurance side, and that's what I didn't realize. And I suppose that's probably all we can kind of give, because this episode, I want people to go on the same journey I went through of, I'm not so sure to, this is probably something I might consider in the future. And it's an absolutely, Tom does this sport justice, and he does himself justice. He's such a humble athlete. It's such a great episode, and I can't wait for people to listen.
With that said, it's this week's episode of the Any Given Runday podcast. Let's go. So this week on the Any Given Runday podcast, we have Irish elite runner and mountain runner with numerous wins, including the Maurice Mullins Ultra in 2018 and a triathlete, all turned into an Elite 15 Hyrox athlete and coach and previous world record holder in Hyrox. Tom Hogan, welcome to this week's episode of the Any Given Runday podcast. How are you getting on?
I'm good, boys. Thanks for having me.
Eric
hold on a minute. That's some CV.
It actually made me feel very old there when you said 2018. I was like, Jesus, that long ago.
There was so many results you've won on IMRA that I was trying to pick out the ones that I knew of. There's probably other people listening go, he's done this, and that, this as well. But we've had people do the Mullins one, so I thought I'd bring that up first. There's a lot of stuff you've done over a couple of years, but I was listening to you on a different podcast, and in 2012, Ireland had one of their best ever Olympic results in terms of boxing, did very well. I think it was here Katie Taylor won gold. But in running, particularly marathon running, they didn't do that well. And in 2016, we had a lot more marathon runners in. Bridge that gap to me in terms of the training. What happened there?
Yeah, then after nobody, I believe, qualified for London 2012 for the marathon from Ireland, male or female. And pretty sure that's right. And a couple of guys got together, Jim Ogney, who was the director of Dublin City Marathon, and a couple of others got together, Jerry Kiernan and Eamon Coughlin, all those guys were kind of involved. And they set up what was called the Marathon Missions to basically make sure that didn't happen again, that they would qualify people next time around. And I suppose the big thing that was happening back then is probably still happening now. I'm not really on the running scene anymore, but nobody wanted to race each other. There was a few pounds to be had at races at the weekend, and it was easier to just go down and jog around at 80% and pick up easy money and avoid all the other people who could do the same thing. And that's what was happening, basically. People knew where people were going at the weekend, so they would go to a different one, just pick up some handy money. You never really had to push yourself to the max. But like, it was to the detriment of the sport, because for a sport to really thrive, the top guys have to be battering the shit out of each other on a regular basis, and that wasn't happening. I think that the whole Marathon Mission thing was basically get everybody together who had the potential or who could offer something to the program, get those guys together once or twice a month, get them battering each other a little bit, but also like make them all realize that the few pound on the weekend shouldn't be the goal. You know, that people could get to an Olympics or get to a World Championship if they actually all work together.
You keep saying they and those and all the rest, but you were involved in this. You were doing some of the running. Am I right in saying that? So you're like, your CV must have been pretty good if during those 4 years you were doing those runs up in the Phoenix Park that time.
Yeah. I had ran a 2:26 in Limerick, and that's when I got asked to kind of go into it. And I had, like, I suppose down in this area, I'd been winning any of the kind of 10Ks, 5Ks, half marathons, anything that was on the road down in this area, I would have been winning at the time. So they kind of went and looked for people who had value. Like, I don't think I would have ever got to the Olympic standard. I think the Olympic standard that time was 2:19. And I don't think I would have got down to that, because it's probably a bit big and a bit heavy to ever get down to that sort of stuff. But it wasn't just about people who were going to get the standard. I suppose to do the training correctly, they needed all sorts of people. So people were brought from the track world who were 800 and 1500 meter guys, because they obviously improved the speed when we did speed sessions and stuff like that. So everyone kind of worked together, and I think there was 8 or 9 people with the standard come 2016. So it obviously worked.
That's a huge change in numbers there. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And it is one of those things where, like, you put a group of people together, you add in competition, you add in a little bit of, it's just that drive and the hunger to be better, because you're not racing. Like, even, okay, you're acknowledging I was a little bit heavier, but I'd say there was still a part of you that was like, I can still race these guys. I can still keep up with these guys.
Yeah, there is. Like, iron sharpens iron, isn't it? It doesn't matter what the sport is. You get competitive people in a room together, and the standard just instantly rises. Like, if you go out on your own every day and you have that day where you feel tired, well, you just kind of ease back a bit. If you go up there and you're feeling tired, but you know all these guys are going to give 100%, well, you have no choice. Like, you don't want to lose face. You have to just go to that place. That's just the way it is. And you just get any competitive people. Doesn't matter what they're playing, cards, tiddlywinks. It doesn't matter. If you put a load of competitive people together, they're going to push each other.
It's fantastic. All the runs and stuff, and the mountain running, and you're a high level. Just before I segue into the different sport you went next, before you into Hyrox, last year I was on the way down to Cork doing the marathon, and my goal at the time was to do 100 miles in 24 hours, but I wanted to do the Connemara 100. And I was like, oh, you need crew and stuff like that. And Eric goes, don't worry about that. I have a camper van. I'll sort you out. I get a license and all the rest for it. But it turns out Eric got a provisional license, and then 6 months later he fecked off to Dubai, and that was the end of that. But I want to hear a good story from someone who actually got a camper van and did something with the triathlon training.
Yeah, we got a caravan first. We actually had this chat yesterday with the two people who were training, and looking back, it was actually insane. And you know, when you're in something, you don't see how mad it is. But when you when you look back, you're like, how the hell did we actually do that? I think it was 2014 was the first year we did it. We got a caravan. We had 4 kids under the age of, it would have been under the age of 10, with the youngest like 1 year old in nappies. And we loaded everybody. I think there were 6 bikes, 6 people into a Jeep and a caravan, and drove around Europe for 6 weeks. Yeah. It was totally insane. We did like 6,500 kilometers. And this is, I think, like when you say dates to people now, they don't actually, like, with technology and stuff, it's hard to visualize. But like, there's no iPads. There's no.
Yeah.
That stuff for kids in 2014. There was like Dora on loop on a little television screen behind my head everywhere I go. It was totally insane. We did it because I had qualified for European Mountain Running Championships. Dina had qualified for European Triathlon Championships. And Dina was also going to do an Ironman. And when we looked at the schedule, we were going to have to fly out to Europe 3 times in 6 weeks. So then we just got this brainwave of, should we get a caravan? We could just go to Europe, drive around 6 weeks. And it was insane. It was insane.
But to be fair,
it was brilliant. It was the first time I ever went to altitude and spent like a couple of weeks at altitude over there. And it's the best result I ever had running for Ireland.
Really? Because the altitude training?
I think so, yeah. I bet people that I was the first home for Ireland that year. And I bet people that I'd never beat before. And I would 100% put it down to being at the altitude for the few weeks leading into the race.
Well, wasn't all the kids in the car trying to entertain them all? No.
Yeah, I just did it because I was trying to get away from them for a month.
Between that and Dora chasing your brain there. And Europe, in fairness, it's probably something you didn't know leaving Ireland. But when you get into Europe in terms of camper vans, and it is well set up for that kind of an active lifestyle when you do get on the road and you do make the mainland.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Like we did it 2014, and we did it every year up to the pandemic. We'd probably still be doing it if that hadn't came and changed everything. We made it slightly easier than that. We got a camper van the second year. Things got a little bit easier to move around.
Were you picking different races each time, Tom, or were you picking the same races? And what were those races?
So we always ended up going back to Challenge Roth in Germany. So we would pick other smaller races to do and to kind of lead up to it as we were traveling there. But that was always kind of the focus.
Why that one? Why Challenge Roth? What's the appeal there?
We just went. The first year that we ended up going, it was because we're in a triathlon club and they had secured places because it was very hard to get a place in that Ironman. And we just loved it. Loved the atmosphere. Loved the village it was set in. We just thought it was a bit crazy and a bit us. This really small village in Bavaria where not much happens for the whole year, and then 250,000 people descend upon it for a weekend.
Sounds like absolute carnage.
Yeah. It's like every single person that lives there just gets on board with this thing and gets in behind it. It's totally crazy the way the whole thing changes for those few days. And it's the biggest mass participation Ironman distance race in the world.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's still the biggest. Like it's crazy big.
Sounds like Eric's putting that on his bucket list now, no?
I have heard, and I've been with people, and it's hard to get into, but it's supposed to be one of the. It's just it carries that special feeling, and they always say they've done good Ironman, but Challenge Roth always was just a great one. It's always one they always say they'll come back to.
They build like a 5,000 or 6,000 seater stadium at the finish line. Like, talk about German engineering. In a day or two to throw up this stadium, and then it's taken down the day after the race. It's totally crazy. But one of the other reasons we kept coming back, like you said there, it's so hard to get into. The morning after the race, to release 1,000 tickets. So if you're still there, you can just buy a ticket for the following year. So we were those suckers who, even though you never wanted to do anything again after doing Ironman, instantly bought a ticket again. We're like, yeah, we start training in 6 months. we go again.
Does it help that you guys are a couple who are both into sport? And how do you manage that with the kids? And who takes turns at the swim? Or how do you manage that?
It massively helps, because I guess like this understanding is probably the biggest thing. If you have a partner who understands what you're trying to do and like why you're dedicating all these crazy hours to something because they have the same kind of goal themselves, it's definitely easier. And it's good for support, because like I said, those days when you're feeling down, if when we're training together, it's very rare two people be feeling down the same day. Like, so when you get that day where you don't want to train, the other person is generally up for it and drags you along. But like, we used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and get 4 and 5 hour turbo rides done before the kids would have to go off to their sports or whatever they would have to do. So we just did insane stuff like that. Like, people say, like, oh, I don't have time to do this or that. Like, there's plenty of time. It's basically what way you're allocating your time is the problem. Time isn't a problem. Like, there's loads of time for things.
And it's what you prioritize and what lifestyle you want and what goals you want for yourselves. And I suppose there's some people who are like, I don't have time. And then there's other people, well, this is an example to my kids. If I am training in peak physical condition and we're active and we're this and that, they will pick that up off the ground, I suppose, and hopefully be involved in sport throughout their lives.
Yeah, that's always been a big thing for us. We've always been like the believer that monkey see, monkey do thing. If the kids see you doing all these things, they do pick them up and start into it. Like, when our kids start having friends and stuff over, and we'd be on the treadmill or the turbo train, or we'd be doing something crazy, and their friends were like, what the hell are your mom and dad doing all the time? Our kids thought that was just a normal thing. This is normal. Like, does this not happen in your house? Like, if we watched it was on a turbo trainer, two sitting on bikes watching TV. So it just became very normal in our house to be constantly doing all that stuff. And a product of that is that our 18-year-old son moved to Arizona in January for a soccer scholarship.
Oh, wow. So congrats.
He's seen sport his whole life, and it's all he's wanted to do as well.
Absolutely brilliant. What I don't get at the moment is, like, now this is going from my end, I wasn't great at soccer when I got 18, 19. I ended up doing something else, and then I ended up doing a little bit of American football. Wasn't great at that. Did marathon running, was okay. Then got into the longer stuff because not as many people did that, and I got a little bit better at that. And Eric's changed all different things. Like, you're winning races. You're winning mountain races, left, right, and center. You're doing really well in triathlon, stuff like that. And then a completely different sport comes in. Like the last I checked, I've never done an Ironman before, but there's no sleds or wall balls in Ironmans. Like, what made you go, what's this new sport? Was it just for a new challenge to switch it up? Were you getting bored with the running and triathlons, or what went on there before? Like, because Hyrox was very new when you did the first one with your wife in 2020 in Hanover.
Yeah, injury. Injury.
Oh, okay.
So in 2019, I had been plagued with hip stuff for like a year, and no one could ever really put their finger on it and go to this person, that person, be a little bit better for a while, and the usual stuff, change shoes, change everything. Nothing kind of worked. And when I went to have an MRI on it, eventually I was told that I have vascular necrosis, which basically means that I need a hip replacement. So wow. I've no blood supply to the top of my femur. So the femur is continuously rotting away. So it doesn't sit in the pocket anymore.
Right.
There's nothing there. So I was told, like, I need a hip replacement, but if I wanted to slow down that process, I needed to kind of pull back on the running and stuff, because I was probably running 80, 90 miles a week at that time. And that was not going to be good. And like, they just kind of scared me, I guess, because they said that you can only get 2 hip replacements in your lifetime, and they usually only last about 15 years. So I quickly did the maths in my head, and I was like, that doesn't get me as far as I want to be going down the road. So,
and how did that feel, I suppose, from dedicating so much to and building a lifestyle around triathlon and running and being a part of this and winning races? Was it disheartening, or is it a case of what new? Like, I need to replace this and I need to change things?
It was kind of what new. Yeah. At the start it was disheartening. But in one way I don't know, I was always a little bit envious of people just going to a race and having fun at a race. And I always wanted to like do that, but never, just for whatever part, there's some part of me that just will not allow me to do that. Like, if I go to a race and someone...
You should hang around with me and Sean more often. We'll drag you down and beat you with experience.
Like, the minute someone fires a gun or says go, that's it. Like, it doesn't matter if it's out in the garden with the kids or what it is. I just have this thing built into me that doesn't allow me to enjoy something. I'm like, I have to go hell for leather here till the end of this thing. So in one way, I was kind of the opinion of, this is the chance to like really change it up completely and start doing things for fun and doing different things for fun. So I got on the internet and searched for a couple of minutes and found this thing called Hyrox. We knew like absolutely zero about it. I knew it was in Germany and it was a German event, and that was all I knew. And I basically bought tickets to Germany for a Christmas present for Dina and said, yeah, when we're in Germany, we're going to do this thing.
Wow. So you didn't know the setup, you didn't know what was in store until...
We didn't know anything. So if people know what, just about everyone knows what Hyrox is now, but now it's all fancy and like you get all the emails when you sign up and blah, blah, blah. At the time, there was nothing. You signed up and there was a briefing in German on site 1 hour before your race. So we knew nothing of what was going on. We didn't understand any of the briefing, didn't understand the rules. I actually asked, the only question I asked the guy was, if I can't move this sled, what happens?
And is it the same? Was it the same setup then that it is now? Has Hyrox never changed? Was it pretty much the same, like your 1K run and everything else there? We'll get into that in a few minutes. Yeah, it was all the exact same.
It was the same exercise. The only thing that was different back then is the lengths on the sleds were longer. So it was 2 25-meter lengths. They've standardized that down to 4 12.5s now, just because it fits nicer into venues and stuff like that. So it was essentially the same thing, just it was actually harder because the 225s and stuff. But at that time, because I was coming off ultras and things, I was like 69 kilos. And
wow, pushing and pulling that sled is not fun at 69 kilo.
No, like I'm 84 kilos now.
That's a big difference. I can see you bulked up for this.
And how did you find that? Obviously, you were a lean, mean running machine, and now obviously weight is involved. Did you enjoy the transition to lifting weights? Because I know myself, I've gotten back into lifting heavy this year, and I'm kind of like, this is so much more fun than running long distance. How did you find it?
I love this. And I tell everybody, like, I fell into Hyrox at the perfect time. The sport, one, was only starting to grow, so it wasn't as competitive at that point. And two, we did that race in February 2020. We came home and like 4 days later, the world shut down.
Jeez.
So like,
Timing.
I tell people I went from 69 kilos to 84 kilos in the year, but I had lockdown. I could do it properly. I didn't just start like eating loads of chocolate bars and shit to put on the weight. I had time to actually do it right and build the muscle properly, like with no competitions going on, which was great, because if competitions had been happening, and I kind of saw from the start Hyrox was going to be a thing. It was going to be quite big. And
what made you see that?
Just the way it was organized, and it was so different, and the atmosphere in the event was so different to anything I'd ever been at. Like, it was like, I describe it as like a party with a little bit of fitness thrown in.
But because there's been other things like that hasn't quite got that until I seen it last year myself. I was like, there was like random workouts each time. It's like there's something here that's not right with other events, but like Hyrox is gotten so big now. But you're brushing over the fact you came third with your wife in that event back in February 2020.
That's, and going back to the injury thing. So I very quickly figured out that the injury wasn't as big of an issue with Hyrox, because I only had to run 1K, then I got a break. Then I ran a K, got a break. So the hip always got a break. So I figured out pretty quickly that I could only have to train maybe 20 kilometers a week for this thing in terms of running, and then do loads of strength work. But going back to being so competitive with everything, that was the reason we wanted to do a second one, because we didn't win that far.
Who was to blame?
Oh, Jesus, Eric.
I'll get her because she's not here. But I think I firmly believe if we had won that thing, we probably just would have went looking for the next thing. But we were just a little bit annoyed that we didn't win it. We're like, we could have bet those people. Let's go train for this thing. And then lockdown happened, and we got to train properly for like a year.
You got to do strategy a little bit as well. Like, you knew exactly what you're doing then and how long the event was going to be. It reminds me of people talking about how they started running 12, 15 years ago, and they're like, there was no Garmin's back then, or watches, or Zone 2 training. All the stuff was just, you started and you had the wristband with the numbers on how far you were going, and that's it. It sounds like you were somewhat similar.
Yeah, we were. And like, we do lots of workshops now. We go to gyms and we tell everybody we spent 6 months wasting our own time. Basically, we trained totally wrong. We basically did a Hyrox every weekend for like 6 months, thinking that this was going to progress us, and it didn't progress us 1 second. And only when we actually sat down then and started thinking we got to break everything down individually, break all the stations down like you would a run. So you train long, slow stuff, you train fast stuff, you train the Zone 2 or whatever type of stuff, endurance stuff. And that's when we started seeing actual gains in the thing, and the things were starting to move forward. And Hyrox had to keep their company going, basically. They had to do this VCF, which is the Virtual Championships of Fitness, during lockdown, because they had to bring money in somewhere. So they had that where they charge people like €20, and then they release the workout every 2 or 3 weeks. And at the end of it, they had a winner and stuff like that. And I came second overall in that, and fourth. I'm second in the age group. I might have been fourth overall, and that qualified me for the World Championships out of lockdown. And then that's when it really kind of started getting serious then.
I can already see the little glint in your eye there when the extra competitive edge kicked in. It was like, oh, there's something here.
Yeah.
Well, you were getting phone calls then to compete going for world records at this stage.
Yeah, so then that was for the first event in London, when they wanted to launch in London. So the thing has gone crazy. There was about 450 or 500 people at that first event in London. And I think it was just convenience, to be honest. I had raced the World Championship, and I had talked a little bit, because the sport was only new. I got kind of friendly with the guys who owned it over there. We had a few beers together, and Hunter was the big draw. He still kind of is the big face of the sport. And I wanted to bring him over to London to promote the thing. But this was like 10 days after World Championship. So he didn't fancy doing another event on his own. So he said, well, I'd prefer to do a doubles. Let's go for a doubles world record. And I think it was just handiness. They're like, Tom only lives in Ireland. We'll put him over. So they just said to me, will you come to London for the weekend, race with Hunter, set a world record, and then you can go home again after the race? I was like, okay, I'll do that.
What was that like with him doing the race with someone like that? Was it just like, I'm going to take a back seat and listen to him for strategy on like, because for people that don't know, when you do this, you have to run in line or like within 3 meters or something of your partner for the 1K. But then you have 1,000 meter in a ski, because you can break that up however you want. Like, so it's not just a 50-50 kind of deal. It could be depending on who's faster or slower.
you can do 5 200s or 4 250s or whatever. At the time, I was still a better runner than Hunter. So the plan was actually that I would take the pace on all the runs and he would just sit on me. And then when we got to the stations, we'd basically talk about how we felt. Like we started off with 4 250s on the ski, and we did 50-50 on the sled push, sled pull. And then after that, it was basically on the runs, we would talk and say, well, how are you feeling? Do you want me to start the station or will you start the station? And that was kind of the way it went. We ended up doing like 50 minutes and 12 seconds, but neither of us had ever thrown a 6 kilo wall ball. So in the pro race, you throw a 9 kilo ball, but in the men's open doubles, you throw a 6 kilo ball. So it sounds like it should be easier, but it was actually harder because we weren't used to how it dropped compared to how it dropped. Like, because gravity plays such a role in that station, it drops a lot slower. So the very first wall ball, I picked the wall ball up and I threw it over the rig. So you had every person like in the hall gathered around watching us. All these cameras are on us, and I pick up the ball and I throw it over the rig and have to run around, pick it up, come back again, and start again.
It's like a pro basketball player just missing the entire rim on a free throw shot, just an airball on it.
Yeah. Like they were bigging it up. They had all the MC guys saying, "Oh, come over to the wall ball. You see the two lads going to set a world record," and then this idiot throws the wall ball away.
There's definitely people listening to this that either haven't done wall balls or saying, hang on, is he saying 6 or 60 or what's the story? Well, I'm telling you now, because I was one of these idiots. Try even a 4 kilo or 3 kilo we haven't worked the wall ball and throwing it up 10 feet, catching it, squatting it down to full depth and going up again. In Hyrox, you have to do 100 times or 75, depends on what group you're in. It sounds easy because of the weight. It's not. And it's at the end of the race as well. Like, it is brutal doing them. It's horrible.
It's very tough. But the sport itself has gone from, that was 3 years ago in London, 500 odd people. And last weekend in London, there was 15,000 people. So that's the growth in 3 years.
More locally, in terms of Ireland, I remember last year there was different games and stuff going on, and we had seen Hyrox, and we were trying to pick people in the gym that would be, we think you'd be good at this, we think you'd be good at this, but seemingly sell out in 3-4 weeks and different things like that, or 6 weeks, whatever it was. But it sold out when we try and twist the people's arms to do it. It had sold out, but took around maybe somewhere between 3 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
This year, instead of 1 day, it's 3 days. And they sold out as if they were Taylor Swift tickets. Like, they just went bang, gone in an instant. Why has it gotten so popular in the UK and Ireland over the last year, 18 months?
It's crazy. It's that whole just FOMO thing. People just don't want to miss out on something that's been talked about and is all over everyone's social media. People just want to go to do one. The only thing that might work against it is when you get that kind of hysteria and stuff, the real people, the real kind of fans of the sport who would do 8-10 races a year, if they can't get tickets, well, then you end up losing those people to the people who will only ever do one event and then they'll never come back because they just want to tick a box. It's like loads of people who just want to do one marathon just to say
exactly
I did. And if Hyrox don't put some sort of system in place to stop that from happening, I think the sport could suffer a little bit. Like Birmingham sold out in 15 minutes and almost 20,000 tickets.
That is an insane amount. It's absolutely crazy. It's scary because obviously we feel like we're figuring out the other elements of sport, the triathlon, where we're only figuring out Ironman, and then obviously there's this new element here. It also helps that the majority of people who are doing this are shredded wheat as well. Let's call a spade a spade. So when you're looking at the Instagram of me and Sean going for the run, very well, Sean is definitely a better version of than I am. But what did you think was like? Is it as well that peak physical all round condition that people are looking for and striving for? Is that a big pull to this kind of sport as well?
Well, I think the tops off thing is a big pull to it, because the Instagram looks better when everyone's top is off. But what I will say about all those people is they're not the people who win the races. The guys who looked like they walked off the cover of Men's Fitness from Men's Health magazine, you won't see those guys on the podium. Like, they can't run. And at its core, Hyrox is a running race. It doesn't matter how fast you are at the stations if you can't run. Like, the biggest gains are made on the runs. At the very top of the sport, in the Elite 15 level, like, the station times will all be probably within 5 and 10 seconds of each other. It's only really on the runs where you can separate some time with people. And now that's getting down to, and this is kind of funny when you talk to runners, because you tell them it's all like they're running 330 kilometers now, and you're like, 330 kilometers, that's slow as anything. But after coming off a 50 meter, 200 kilo sled, 330 is phenomenal to be running.
To your point, I was in Dublin most of the day actually last year, and a lot of them with the t-shirt off, they were on the burpee broad jumps, and I say on that station, lying would be more appropriate, just lying on that sweaty floor and just having nothing in them, and you could tell it was the lack of running had got to them. They had overlooked the running. For people listening to this that are doing Hyrox in November this year, and I know you're definitely closer to it. You definitely need to switch up your runs to get different interval runs. But I'm talking about those doing for the first time, building up a base that haven't done much running, maybe came from a gym background. Do you think they need to be near a 12, 16 kilometer base and then building that? Or is that too high? Or what would you recommend?
They would need to build up to at least once a week doing a 90-minute plus run. Because a lot of them, especially if they're doing the first Hyrox, the average Hyrox finishing time is 1:35. So if you can't go out and run for 90 minutes, you're not going to be able to do a Hyrox for an hour and 35 minutes. Like, it's just not going to happen. Runners actually have it easier. If you're coming in from a running background, it's a much easier transition than from, say, a bodybuilding background. Those guys do not like to run or move at all. Runners can easily put on some weight. Like, it's quite easy to put on a little bit of weight. Whereas if you've never ran, and like, it's that, like that t-shirt, isn't it? My sport is your sport's punishment. Like, that is that's how lots of those guys look at running. It's a punishment. Like, they just don't enjoy doing it. So if you like running, I think it is the perfect way to come in. And it's very funny that I talk to lots of people, and people see Hyrox as this brand new sport, which it kind of is. It's only been around since 1997, which they were very small, localized German events to kind of get it up and running. But because it's new, they look at this, like the Elite 15 people, and they're like, oh, well, like they got there in a year. Like me, say, like I was there from the very start in the Elite every year. Like, well, sure, he got there from the start, so I can get there in 6 months. But what they're failing to see is, like, I had 20 years of endurance behind me, and every single person in that current Elite 15 has 10, 15, 20 years of an endurance background. Like, Alexander Ronkovic swam for Austria. Like, he told me that he used to do like 100 100ths off 1 minute and 10 seconds. And like, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard.
That is phenomenal.
It's insane.
And that is the one thing, and people see it as, like, Sean, when he's going for his backyard ultra, and he'll try and make an Ireland team, because there's not many people silly enough to do them kind of races. But with this, as you said, the elite status, and people we know and friends who've got into it, they have been phenomenal runners. They've been phenomenal swimmers, triathletes. And it's the muscular endurance and the mental ability. Does the mental side come in is kind of where I'm going to next, from having your experience in Challenge Rot and the ability to just go, it's just another rep and keep in control, I suppose, of the effort. How do you manage that? And is that where your experience comes in?
Yeah, I think my biggest strength probably across the Hyrox was managing effort. I know exactly what I can put out for an hour, and I'm able to pace it very, very much correctly from the start, where other people are not pacing it properly at all. And I think that's probably the biggest thing with a Hyrox. The second one then is probably suffering. Like, you have to have an ability to suffer. If you're not willing to suffer, that's what it's going to come down to. It's about suffering. It's about juggling lactic for 60 minutes. And that comes back to being able to pace your effort. Because if you go crazy on the sleds, which 90% of people will do, and that comes down to ego. It's always the men. It's the women more stick to a plan. But if you and me are pushing side by side, there's always kind of the glance to the side, and you're like, well, I'm bigger than he is. I'll push it faster than he'll push it, and then we both come off the sled totally wrecked. And the guy who paced himself a couple of lanes down runs past us. So it's definitely about pacing, and knowing your own limitations is a big thing. Like, and when I said runners coming into it is a bit easier, compromise running is very different than normal running. And there'll probably be, we'd always say to people that, say we did 8 by a kilometer off a minute's rest, if you add 20 seconds onto that pace, so if you're doing 3:20 for all those kilometers off a minute's rest, you'll probably run your Hyrox race pace to be like 3:40, 3:45. It'll be like 25 seconds more than that 1 kilometer pace. But if you're a really, really good runner, like you said, you have some really good runner friends, their difference is usually way bigger, because their compromised running is never going to catch up with how good they are at actual running. So if they can do them 8 by kilometers in 3 minutes, they'll probably still be 3:45 or 3:50 in a Hyrox. It'll be 45 to 50 seconds difference, just because they've never practiced that compromise thing, and they don't have the weight. Like, you have to be, if you're doing the pro division, you have to be over 80 kilos, or the sleds are going to crush you.
And then the sleds come in pretty early. I want to talk a little bit about your Team Hogan coaching and stuff in a minute. But for those that don't know Hyrox, almost like a quick fire round, I'm just going to quickly go through the event and like 1 or 2 very quick tips on each one. So we went through the running build up 90 minutes before. So this basically for someone not to win, but like their first one is, let's say it's November, Dublin first one, and it's the type that wants to do Hyrox every weekend. And it's like, no, you need to, pick your spots and stuff like that. So 1,000-meter ski. You've done your first 1 kilometer, you're on a 1,000-meter ski. Half a letter up to 10 in a dampener, big mistake, or try and get off it quicker, or what way would you go?
There's a massive mistake. Don't even change the dampeners. They're set to 6 in the men's race, and they're set to 5 in the women's race. Leave it there. Too much muscular fatigue if you ramp that up any higher. So you're better off using it where it's at. And then slow it down. So if you've done 1,000 meters in training in 4 minutes, well, then I'd be looking to do 4:20 in Hyrox. Like, that's the way you have to pace it. You can't go your 1K max at the start of Hyrox.
You're beating the person beside you. That's all that matters. 50 meters. So you do your 1K again, 50 meter sled push. By pacing yourself, would you like stop during the track on the way down, or just before the legs get tired?
No, stop every half a length, because once the lactic accumulates on the sled push, it ain't going anywhere for a long time. So you have to try and starve it off. So you have to break half a length. Same
approach to the sled pull?
No, the sled pull is different because of the stop-start nature of it. Like, you only can pull it back, and then you get a break walking forward to pick the rope. The only thing I'd say is don't drop the rope. Keep it in your hands and work it through your hands as you move forward through the box. And your break on that is basically when you switch to the other side, you should walk. You'll see guys running, and then when they get to the other side, they stop for a break. And like, why not? Just walk across.
It's experience when you say like that, but I just looking back at it from last year, because I've seen people different divisions, the amount of people that would run across that and then hands in the hips and by the thighs, I'm like, yeah, it actually makes perfect sense the way you say it now. They're in that race mentality, I suppose, without actually thinking logically. So after that, you've got your 1K run, burpee broad jumps for 80 meters. Is it trying to get as far as a bigger jump on every single broad jump to do less burpees? Is it half in that, or is it just you got to grind this one out?
You just got to kind of figure what works for you on them, because like some people, like we've a 22-year-old son who, like, he has coil springs in his legs. He takes a few jumps and he's able to eat the meters up. I obviously can't do that, so it suits me better to do more reps. Suits him better to do less reps and jump further. So you got to kind of just figure what's best for you, and they just suck. Like, nobody
They look awful. That alone puts me off doing them. Like, I was seeing it. I was doing a marathon the next day, and I wasn't fit for the marathon. I was like, I'd rather suffer for 4+ hours than the marathon than do burpee broad jumps at all in a 90+ minute race. Like awful stuff.
Have you Impossible Mile thing?
What's that?
Have you seen that Impossible Mile?
No. What's that?
Oh, I have on the track.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Sean. If you think the 80 meters is horrible, wait until you hear this.
What's this?
It's 400 meters of lunges first, is it?
Yeah.
400 is 400 meters of burpees, 400 meters of bear crawls, and I think you get to run the last one, do you?
Yeah, I'm just gonna look it up now, so we have it. But it's essentially that. But like, again, I've seen videos of the gym junkies showing up, going, "Oh, we can do this," and they are broken. Broken by the first. It is absolutely disgusting looking. Now, like, even the thoughts of it, like I wouldn't. Maybe you're different. Huh? I don't know if I'd even attempt it, because I know I after 200 meters of one of them, I'd be like, I can't make it around. Like, if I was able to split it into 50s, perfect. But you're not allowed change until you finish the 400.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely disgusting.
Is this just a cruel challenge, or is this actual competition?
I've seen it lots of places lately, so it must be. It probably started off as some crazy challenge, and now someone is like, "Okay, I'll make a competition out of this." Do it. We'll charge him. We'll charge him to do it.
While Eric's looking that up, 1,000-meter road, and after you somehow got through the burpees, same thing as the ski.
Yeah, you just slow it down and kind of take stock of where you're at that point. You have 20 odd minutes to go, so it's kind of a good place to. And lots of people actually take gels or take jellies, or if they're taking on some sort of fuel, they'll do it there.
Stage. Next one then, 200 meters fabric carries after another 1K run. Is this just grab on, hold, and just march it out? Like, there's not too much to that one, really. Just focus on grip strength.
Yeah, race it.
Yeah, sandbag lunges for 100 meters. This one is probably the one where the burpees, they were lying on the ground, but I couldn't see. But because people were standing, that you could see them having a conversation face to face with God in this one. Just seeing how far they had to go, and just being like, and I'm thinking the people are probably listening. I'm like, how are they still going and pushing? There's just phenomenal stuff to keep driving through that. Horrific. The camp is technique to that one, or
you kind of have to carry the knowing that you're almost there. Is the only thing that kind of keeps you going through them. Like, I think if. In one way, they're harder because they come so late, but in another way, it's good because I think if they came in the middle and you thought to yourself, geez, 30 minutes after this, it would be soul destroying. Is that you kind of know I'm almost there. I just got to get this done. It is just a war, basically. Like, when it gets to that stage of a race, it doesn't matter what the race actually is. When you get down to the last kind of mile or whatever, it's just a war, isn't it? It's just how much can you actually beat yourself up at that point. That's all it comes down to. And
that brings us to the last one, the wall balls. That's
the ultimate in beating yourself up.
Has it been an unbroken 100? I saw something about there's a Red Bull tag or something like that if you get 100 unbroken wall balls. Have you attempted it?
It's starting to happen a lot now. So, but it's so different. I don't know if people have done a lot of wall balls and listen to the show, but I can do 150, 160 here unbroken at home, even after work. But in the race, you get to like 50 and it feels like you've like a ton. But the first guy to do it in a serious competition was that swimmer, Alex Ronkovic, last year at Europeans. And interestingly, he told us, at Worlds, he told us after the race. He didn't tell us before the race, obviously, but he had trained it to try and do it. And he could only do it if he slowed his previous run down by 15 seconds. So he tested and figured out that if he slowed down that last run by 15 seconds, he could go unbroken. And when he did the math in his head, then he was like, right, if everyone is running 3:45s and I run 4 minutes, and by doing them unbroken, he actually did them in 3:20, and everyone else was doing them in like 3:50. So he saved 30 minutes on the wall balls, but he gave away 15 minutes. But like, it was crazy because to have that much confidence in yourself. At the time, he was like, I think he was third in the race or something. He dropped back to like fourth and ended up coming second because of the wall balls. So he was confident enough to say, I'll lose a few paces here because I know what I can do. And when I get in on the wall.
Competitively, that is so hard. For your last kilometer run where you probably just empty the tank to go, you know what?
Yeah.
A full 15 seconds slower and like conserve energy while those that are probably around you are going that bit faster and you're probably
Yeah.
like dropping down that leaderboard near the end. Like that
Yeah.
is, like you say, mentally, that is absolutely phenomenal. Is there
Yeah.
stuff like that that's coming out in the because of the sport is getting bigger and bigger? And like you said, in the last couple of years, like it's just thousands now doing it in London. Are you finding that a lot of records are getting broken quickly in this last year or two, with different strategies and approaches, and the sport's just more evolving?
Yeah, like every record is just dropping now. But things are changing a lot too. Like new equipment suppliers, people say the sleds are lighter now. They're not lighter. They're just brand new sleds all the time by new equipment suppliers. So they're obviously going to move a bit faster when they're nice and shiny underneath and everything is nice and slick and there's no rust or anything like that. So that's a big factor of it getting faster. That all the equipment is all brand spanking new now all the time. So that's a big thing towards the records. Courses they're able to get bigger venues now, which means now you have these ones, especially in Spain, where they're like effectively 400-meter running tracks. Like there's banked curves, not banked curves, but actual curves instead of right angles. Like in Dublin, we had right angles everywhere. Like that was the slowest run course I've ever seen at a Hyrox.
Is that changing this year? Dublin, do you have any idea? Because it seemed chaotic at times at Dublin and there was like did you race it?
Yeah, that's the slowest we've ever raced. We were the only pair to break an hour in Dublin. Nobody else broke an hour.
How many times did you almost go through a spectator on like the crossovers and stuff like that? Because I had the crossover a fair few times, and so I saw that place a lot. Like I was doing a bit of social media and stuff for the gym, but seeing people just being like thinking they were more important than the people actually doing the race, and you saw one or two were going through them. I was like, fair play. You probably should have dropped the shoulder and hit them harder because like you're doing an event. Like it's like just the lack of self-awareness of it. I'd say that was an and then trying to counter laps and everything else going on. It must have been a hell of a struggle.
It was. I thought the worst kind of run event, and it was funny because anyone who'd been to an event on the continent or in the UK came away from Dublin saying that was a bit of a shit show, and everyone who was a first timer in Dublin was like, "Oh, that was fantastic. This was great."
We had so many people in the gym that wanted to sign up after seeing that, and I was telling people from the UK going, I can't believe it's ran this way. Like what this is here. This is like different orders and stuff, and I'm getting through people and all the rest. And there was so just you could hear the UK accents giving out about the Irish. This is deadly.
In terms of infrastructure, we're a bit third worldish for things like conference centres and stuff. The places that they are, even in London, like the XL is unbelievable. You walk out the door of the XL, you have like 20 bars, restaurants, like the public transport goes to the door of it. There's hotels outside the door. Like it's crazy. And every place that Hyrox hold one in Europe is like that. And for 2 years, me and Dina were on to Christian and Hyrox, come to Ireland. And he kept on saying to us, give us a list of the convention centres. And me and Dana always laughed at him and said, like, there's one. Why are you talking about a list? Like, there's one place you can come to. And he thought we were joking. And we thought he was joking because he kept saying it to us over and over again. And then they sent a team over here. So they came over to film us for, we were doing a documentary for the World Championships last year. So 2 guys came down here to film us and 2 others stayed in Dublin and went to look at that. And I talked to Christian after about a week later, and he's like, "Nah, that place can't happen. You've got to have some." So they didn't want. They don't want to use that venue because one, public transport is a big thing for them. They like to have public transport to the door so that everybody has an easy way to get there. They don't want cars and stuff on the roads, but they saw a huge market for it, so they're kind of stuck in that. We don't have anywhere else to put it. So they're going to put it there. And now their theory is put it over 3 days. It'll be less chaotic because they won't let in as many people each day. I think there was 4,500 in October. And I think they'll only let like maybe 3,500 in per day.
Spread it out.
Time around. Yeah.
Well, I hope it works out a lot better from this year. Well, obviously it did in a way because it didn't tear getting sold out as fast as it did. But if someone's listening to this and they're listening because they saw your name on it and they're like, I want to, this guy clearly knows what he's doing. Like, and like you're very modest about it because you did the doubles the other week in London. You won the doubles last week. Your wife has done phenomenal as well. You're representing Team Ireland in the relay coming up. Is that very soon that coming up?
That's the 9th of June, so it's like 2 weeks away. So
you're putting a green jersey back on again for that. Like that's class and all. If people are listening going, how do they get in touch with you? How do they have you as a coach? Do you still have coaching slots open at teamhogancoaching.com, or how does that work?
Yeah, we're more or less full all the time, but like with Worlds and stuff coming up, we know that there is some people just kind of were training up to that point, and then they probably will end up dropping out. Because like I said earlier, you're getting to the point now where people just want to do a few races and then they get onto something else, or to go back to running or back to the triathlon or whatever. So there is always places opening up. So if anyone wants to get in touch, we have a teamhogan.com webpage there where you can kind of inquire about training and stuff like that. The sport is growing at like a phenomenal, like user into Ironman, and it was funny that straight after the first London last year, Joe Skipper called me like 2 days after the race. He had jumped into London and got his ass kicked.
He got spanked big time.
But like what I found so interesting about the whole thing was he saw Hyrox as a bigger thing than Ironman. He said to me, bigger potential for sponsors and for me to make money out of Hyrox than there is for me to make money out of Ironman. And he had this season that's happening now. He said, I have to do this season because I have sponsors and I've signed contracts. But he said, when this season's over, I'm going to go at Hyrox. I'm going to go all into it. And Sebastian Canel is doing the exact same thing. He's going all into Hyrox.
It seems to be taking over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It's just like these guys see that it's an endurance sport, and you pack on a bit of muscle, well, then they have the tools necessary to do well at it.
And they have the resources, they have the life built around training, they've got the base of pure endurance. And he's renowned for jumping in on things. He jumped in on the world record attempt to sub-7, and he's phenomenal. He just has that mentality, and to hear athletes like that are switching into this kind of sport is terrifying because of the mentality they bring, the endurance they have, the doggedness they have. Like it's phenomenal to think that like athletes struggle so much in sport, in athletics, in triathlon, and now you have a gym sport, an endurance gym sport of a multidisciplinary, and they're like, this is big because people can see it. People can touch it when they go to a gym, and you know they can't see themselves doing an Ironman, but they can see themselves doing this. And the team element is fantastic.
It's great. I had a very surreal moment in Berlin a few weeks ago where I was in the same heat or same wave as Sebastian, and we're racing each other neck and neck for a lot of it. He'd gain a little bit on the runs. I'd catch him on every single station and go out with him again. And at the end of the race, we were in Roth when he won Roth a few times, and he was the big name in triathlon. Now, obviously, I was nowhere near him in those kind of races. He didn't know who the hell I was. But we went to go up to him afterwards because we had got a picture with him and our daughter when she was like 2 years old at one of those races back in Roth. And when we approached him, he was like, "Oh, you're Tom Hogan. I follow all your stuff on Hyrox and I listen to everything you have to say about the sport."
Wow.
Like, yeah.
Well, if he listens to this and wants to come on to the podcast, me and Sean we won't charge him £1 million.
I'm conscious we've had you nearly an hour on the podcast, Tom. Wrapping this one up because you talk about how marathon runners have gone towards Hyrox. You've talked about how Ironman as well. I've seen retired Premier League footballers as well. I want to say John Terry, but there was definitely one or two footballers. Was it John Terry, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I think the lady who trains him does a lot of Hyrox, and that's how he got involved. But the guy who won Doha, I want to say last week, so many Hyrox every week now, I lose track. Shadiq El Tafori is his name. He played for Man City and Man United.
Wow. That's class.
Yeah.
One we haven't mentioned, and I might get you a bit of a rant to end the podcast on. You haven't talked about the fittest men on earth, CrossFitters. Have you seen many of them on the Hyrox circuit over the last couple of years?
You're just trying to wind me up now.
Yep.
The CrossFitters, like, they think they're the best. So that fittest on earth thing drives me crazy, or fittest in Ireland, because, like, how can you say you're that? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I could argue I'm it, and some cyclist go out, he's it, and then a runner can say he's it, and the boxer can say he's the fittest, and a swimmer. Doesn't make any sense for a start. So to claim you're the fittest in the world or the fittest in the country is just stupid. But but the CrossFit guys do quite well. Like, I will say this, they're impressive for the size that they are. Like, when you see the top CrossFit guys coming into Hyrox, like, they can move. They just can't move as well as the top Hyrox guys can move, because we're probably 10 kilos lighter than they are. And they'll never close the gap for a top level CrossFit guy. Like, who's the guy who was banned for drugs? Ricky Garrard. Like, he did Sydney this year. For someone like him to close the gap, he has to lose probably 15 kilos and dedicate a year of his life to running. Like, and they'll never close the gap if they're not willing to do that. And they won't do that. Like, they just will not do that.
They lose all their Olympic lifting kind of things and all the rest. The weight lifts weight, and that's dropping if they unless they commit themselves to Hyrox only. But it sounds like some are doing it just to prove a point, I suppose, or maybe that's my negative thinking of CrossFit athletes as well coming over.
I think
we're never going to CrossFit athlete the podcast, are we, Eric?
No.
I think that they thought that they would be able to just transition over and like win the races. Like, I raced in Basel the start of last season, and some guy he'd won like the Switzerland Championship 7 years in a row. He's fittest man in Switzerland for 7 years, and he'd been to the games and stuff like that. And he was with us on the first run. He murdered the ski. He got out like 10-15 seconds ahead of the rest of us, and then we never saw him again. Like, he disappeared.
Tommy Terrace, he just went straight into a ditch. He took a right corner too hard and just was gone.
It's like, I don't know, you can't just take the sport on as, like, if you're a good half marathon runner, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to smash an ultra. Like, it's a different beast. And if you don't treat it with some respect and actually train for it, it's going to just chew you up. And
I'd say those like the Joe Skippers, those who see the potential in it will make the switch. Those who are clever with following a brand and following a trend and trying to be ahead in their professional career will dedicate that time. And then the others will just have to recognize we just need to stay in our lane and
exactly.
We are swimmers and they're runners. You know, it's two different sports. And although it can seem similar, like a half marathon and a marathon can seem similar, but it's two different sports essentially. And I think that is what's going to happen, and people will start to have to choose, do they like the endurance side? Like, personally for me and Sean, obviously we're way tailored towards the endurance side of things, you know, the idea of doing CrossFit is just not even next or near anything we'd want to do, you know, and I think it is just going to be that, whether there's healthy competition between the two, but it's still so different.
But that's the big draw of Hyrox too. If you have a huge endurance background, you can just do doubles together, and you can get, you know, this is why they're able to pull everybody in from all sorts of backgrounds. Because you do a doubles, you just share the load. You don't have to be super strong to move sleds and stuff like that. And their big play is basically to get into TV. Like, they know that the real money in sport is TV money. When you get into that. And that's what this international relay is about in 2 weeks' time. So, like, the Hyrox, it's like anything. I find it exciting because I'm in the bubble of it. So I know everyone who's involved, and I'll sit down and I'll watch a race for an hour because I know everybody. I'm interested in it. That's boring for a lot of people. Like, they don't want to watch these guys jumping up and down on the floor for an hour. Same as a marathon is super boring for someone who isn't into marathon running. But Hyrox have realized that in the normal Hyrox race, say Hunter leads from start to finish, nobody wants to watch it. Like, nobody. But by doing a relay, it'll be over in probably under 45 minutes. That's how fast it'll be. The lead will constantly change because they've made it co-ed. So if I start and a female from the UK starts and a female from the US starts and we're all in the start line together, the lead is going to constantly change every time.
So the relay is going to be live on YouTube and on Twitch. I think Hyrox have their own YouTube channel and their own Twitch. I don't even know what Twitch is. I hear the kids talking about it all the time.
Something that happens to your legs when you're going to sleep.
And yeah, it's on the 9th of Sunday, the 9th of June, and it's the finale of the World Championship. So they really are making this the kind of the pinnacle of it. Everything is going to be geared towards this. It's going to be on the grid format, so it's not like your typical Hyrox. It's more like the Elite 15 races, where we're all on lanes beside each other.
Oh, brilliant!
That makes it a hell of a lot easier for them to film and actually put out good content rather than people just running around in circles and you can't see everybody together, which isn't great for viewers. Yeah, so that's their kind of play into really pushing it into the mainstream. I suppose if they can get this sport down to 45 minutes, and what they kind of wanted from this was not necessarily Hyrox athletes. They wanted people who might be super rowers or super on a skier. So like Dina picked one guy for our team who canoed for Ireland for 10 years. He was ranked in the top 10 in the world for 10 years running.
Jeez, incredible athlete.
Yeah, so he's like, Barry's insane. Like, he can run 250 kilometer and he can also row around 250 or 3 minutes for 1,000 meters, which is pretty insane.
You feeling confident for it?
Yeah, I feel we have a chance. I think Dina's kind of approached it the right way, and that we're trying to get all the Dave Brailsford medal, we call it, where we're trying to get all the little 1%.
Yeah.
So like we have like Barry, who's the canoeist, like Barry wasn't doing another race at Worlds, and the other girl who's coming, she's not doing another race. So they're little things like that where some people will have team on their team, people who race on Friday and Saturday. We should be pretty fresh going into ours, and I think those little things will make a difference when it comes down to probably seconds at the end of a race.
Is this your only event as well at Worlds this year, or are you doing another one as well?
No, we had qualified to do doubles together, and like the goal with both of us not doing elite this year was to win the doubles world championship, but we both had a lot of injuries, and the doubles is on the morning of the relay, so we're
okay.
Like with the injuries and stuff, it'd be too much to try to put the body through 2 races in one day, so we're gonna skip the doubles and go all in.
But with the spotlight on you and having that Team Ireland name and all the rest again, that's going to be class.
Yeah, it'll be brilliant. And like the support we've had from everybody, like I thought I was going to have to, we went to O'Neill's for gear, like to see would they make custom made stuff for us. And I thought I was going to have to like explain what Hyrox was, and instantly one was like, I know exactly what Hyrox was, we'll give you stuff, no problem. Like it's not
yeah. What do you want?
Like Ram, who make, I don't know if you've seen the Ram rollers. The Ram are going to sponsors, they're sponsored like some money for the athletes to travel out and accommodation and stuff, and they give the lads some products, so they've been fantastic.
Brilliant.
Great to have Irish companies on board behind us to kind of the sponsors, because we could have went to Puma and got gear off them, but I think it means a bit more to go to an Irish company and then to actually produce something with Ireland on it, rather than just have 4 yellow tops from Puma or 4 green tops from Puma or whatever the hell it would have been.
And it's more buy-in from the country behind you representing it. You know, it's a representation of us as a whole in sport, and it's what you're doing in this sport and what you have done in sport over the years is absolutely phenomenal. And you are center stage for what will be the next generation of people who don't know anything but Hyrox. And you will be that person that has kind of set the stage for that and has set the standard. Yeah. who became famous from going on a really good podcast once upon a time. But it's absolutely phenomenal to watch this. We're very aware we've taken up a lot of your time. We are so happy to watch, and anything you do, we're really behind you. We're looking forward to the 9th ourselves, and I know everyone else who has bought or failed to get a ticket for these events is very much going to be watching and seeing how you get on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been fun. I haven't listened to like anything to do with running or anything in forever, actually. A long time. The last time I ran a race, I tell you what, and this will give you a bit of a laugh before we go. The typical of every kind of probably small time running club in Ireland, but there's an old guy local who's been over it like since day one, since way back. And I asked him to build a wall at the front of my house here about 3 years ago. He does a bit of building work. And he said, I'll build a wall if you run the county cross country for me. So the last race I raced was like, must be 2 years ago now. 2 years ago, because he wouldn't build a wall unless I went down in the middle of December to run around the mucky field. And I was like, fine.
I hope it's a nice wall.
I'll make sure it was finished first because he pulled me to another race and wasn't finished before I did it.
And on that note, Tom, thank you very much for coming on this week's episode of the Any Given Runday Podcast. That's it for myself, Eric, and Tom. Take care.
Cheers, guys.